What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic: the Ldbc wished for the downfall of Eddie Hearn and DAZN, but it seems it is the PBC well that is drying up. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glazzy run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, let's talk some boxing. All right, so you guys know about Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, DAZN, okay, British boxing company, promoter, and app. Okay, DAZN is an app. They have an app. I think it's like $9.99 per month to subscribe to the app. So Eddie Hearn is not necessarily, Eddie Hearn is not a very popular guy among the so-called Ldbc boxing community here in America, and neither is Anthony Joshua. Okay, now I mean I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua doesn't have fans in America. He does, but I'm talking about the Ldbc people like Phantom Boxing, Blue Blood Sports, people like that. So there's many more, but those are just two of the prominent ones. So most of these guys, don't really like Anthony Joshua because they basically run with the Deontay Wilder narrative. They're pushing narratives. They're supporters of Deontay Wilder, and they basically push narratives for Deontay Wilder. Okay, so naturally they don't really like DAZN or Eddie Hearn, or Matchroom Boxing, which is run by Eddie Hearn. So ever since Eddie Hearn, made his foray into boxing in the USA, these guys have been basically forecasting, gloom and doom for Eddie Hearn and for DAZN. Basically saying that, it's an app, and these fighters are fighting on an app, and this app is is not gonna go anywhere, and this, that, and the other. So this is like a couple of years now, and we fast forward to the present, and we're seeing that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing and DAZN is thriving, basically. Okay, they have expanded to many countries, over 200 at last count. Okay, and at the same time, we can contrast that with what's going on at PBC and Fox and ESPN and Top Rank. Okay, so the traditional network setup with promotional companies and the networks partnering to put out boxing matches, it seems like there's a little trouble in paradise. Okay, there's rumors going out that Fox is getting ready to basically withdraw from their agreement with PBC, Premier Boxing Champions, and that it's a due to various reasons. In the meantime, like I said, Eddie Hearn and DAZN, Matchroom Boxing and DAZN, they're basically thriving. They're doing very well. I mean, they're putting on many fights per year. I mean, they have the #1 heavyweight champion in the world, Anthony Joshua. Okay, and they have a lot of premier fighters such as Canelo Alvarez, Triple G, Demetrius Andrade, Tevin Farmer, and that's just the American boxers. American-based boxers who are fighting on under the DAZN banner. So here, like I said, PBC and Fox, it looks like their honeymoon is probably over, and there's grumbling about a possible breakup of their partnership, which started in 2018. And, you know, from what I'm hearing, it's more, you know, that, like, for example, they had the Danny Garcia, Errol Spence matchup, and, you know, they were, the suits at Fox were looking to get a big boost from that fight, and, you know, but however, you know, the fight was pretty disappointing in terms of numbers. Okay, uh, it didn't do as well as they thought it was gonna do. I mean, you know, I'm hearing that they were expecting like 600,000 to 700,000 pay-per-view buys for that fight, and it did under 250,000 pay-per-view buys. So, needless to say, the suits over there at Fox wasn't very happy about that. Okay, and it was basically a big disappointment. And the same thing with the Anthony with the Tyson Fury Deontay Wilder fight. It didn't crack 1 million pay-per-view buys. Okay, so, you know, that big fight, you know, supposedly a big, quote unquote big fight like that. You know, Deontay Wilder supposedly being the star. That fight didn't do very well either. I mean, you know, a big fight like that, a heavyweight fight, and, you know, they were looking for that fight to do over 1 million pay-per-views, but it didn't. I mean, it basically got outsold, you know, by a fight such as you know, exhibition matches, you know, with YouTubers, you know, Jake Paul, and, you know, also the Mike Tyson, you know, exhibition, okay, fight. So, I mean, so needless to say, the executives at Fox, you know, pretty disappointed. Same thing with ESPN, you know, that, you know, this is basically what's going on with boxing. And so there's a lot of grumbling about the quality of the matchups that's being made. And, you know, these networks are looking to see more 50-50 fights as opposed to basically, you know, mismatches. And they basically complain about the fact that a lot of these fighters, you know, are not really, a lot of the fighters are not really fighting quality opponents. And, you know, they even made reference to, you know, like Gervonta Davis and how carefully he's been brought along as opposed to putting him in there with exciting fighters where they can, you know, basically get more eyes on their product. And so they're not happy. Okay, and so this is why we're looking at, you know, the possible breakup of the partnership between PBC and Fox. Okay, so again, you contrast that with DAZN and Matchroom Boxing, and like I said, they're doing very well over there. You know, I mean, again, you know, boxing here in the U.S., you know, has a tough way to go. There's a lot of other sports here as well, but, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, it's the climate, you know, it's a pandemic. But then the networks are looking at the fact that the UFC is doing very well. Okay, I mean, exciting fights. They're having exciting fights. You know, good pay-per-view numbers, and they're looking over there at the UFC and they're seeing all of that. And then they, you know, we see that in boxing, you know, you don't see the same thing. So they basically they're basically putting the blame on the fact that, you know, the fights that people want to see are not being made. And so this is what's going on right now, you know, in the boxing world. So, I mean, a lot of these Ldbc guys live in their own bubble, really, and you know, I guess they're not realizing that, you know, when they talk about, you know, the zone, they, you know, derogatorily, you know, basically they call it an app in a derogatory manner. Okay, or who want to fight in an app? But it's like they're not seeing what's going on. Streaming is the future. You know, and as a matter of fact, it's the present right now. Everybody's going to streaming, okay? And so the fact that DAZN came out ahead of the curve with their app, you know, like a couple of years ago, they got a big jump on everybody else, okay? And so the results of that, you know, have been felt right now with how good they're doing as opposed to, you know, the other networks, you know? So a lot of networks now trying to jump into the streaming platform. I mean, ESPN already has ESPN Plus, which is their streaming platform, so they got a pretty good jump start. But Fox doesn't really have anything, have an equivalent to that, and so you know, they're looking to shift away from the boxing into something else where they can get more people to, you know, view their products. And so this is the situation that's going on right now. Again, you know, like I said, these Ldbc guys, you know, they're basically, you know, they don't live in the fantasy world. I mean, we hear talk about people like Errol Spence being a pay-per-view star and this, that, and the other. But, you know, it might be a pay-per-view star to the Ldbc, but to the networks, not so much. You know, they're not very happy with what they're getting from Errol Spence or from PBC, generally speaking, and, you know, from Errol Spence specifically. You know, again, they're looking for 50-50 fights, and, you know, they're basically looking, you know, and talking about the Errol Spence. A lot of these people would love to get the Errol Spence Terence Crawford fight, or for example. You know, they complain about fights marinating too long, and you know, them, and even they're even talking about the fact that the fights might end up, you know, coming on after the fighters are, you know, not in their prime anymore. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, you know, with these networks and these promotional companies, and so this is like a really big thing that's going on. So you see the effect of all of that again is that, you know, a lot of these fighters, like for example, you've seen Sean Porter trying to shop fights over at Top Rank, because there's really nothing for them at PBC, really. I mean, at this point, especially at the welterweight division, you know, if Errol Spence doesn't get this Ugas fight, where does he go from there? What fight does he have that's coming up that's going to make money for him? Not only, I mean, because the way this thing works is if the networks make money, the fighters make money. And if the networks are not making the money, the fighters not going to make any money. Okay, and that's just the way it is. And so, you know, if Errol Spence doesn't fight Terence Crawford, who does he fight to make the kind of money and the kind of, you know, get the kind of viewership that the networks are looking for? He doesn't have anybody. So I'm thinking, you know, which is, I guess, the fact that Terence Crawford came out recently and said he's not even going to act for the Errol Spence fight anymore, I'm thinking that a lot of these network guys are looking at that and saying, oh no, we can't have that, you know, because I don't know if you guys know, but a couple of weeks ago, you remember when Errol Spence came out and said that the suits are, you know, trying to force him to just fight and shut up or to take a pay cut. So again, I've made some reference to that before, but I'm going into more detail with it now, and this is in reference to the fact that this is what the networks and the people at PBC and, you know, but most of the networks, you know, are saying. This has a lot to do with the fact that PBC and Fox might end up, you know, ending their agreement early, because again, the networks are looking at the fact that they're not getting the viewership that they hoped to get when they first started this thing. The Errol Spence fight, that, you know, a lot of these guys are looking forward to seeing the Errol Spence Terence Crawford fight. I mean, I'm not talking about from a fan's perspective. I'm talking about from a business perspective, because again, that fight is supposed to be a bonanza for not just the fans, but more importantly, from a business standpoint, for the networks, and they really want that fight. And so this is why you were hearing Errol Spence coming out and saying that, oh, these suits, you know, want him to fight and just shut up and fight, and he's not going to do it because he's not going to take a pay cut. Why don't they take a pay cut? So with that kind of attitude, you know, these guys at, you know, Fox and some of these other networks are saying, hey, you know, we don't, if this thing is not working, you know, for us, then, you know, we don't see any point in, you know, for it to continue. Okay, because these fighters are not fighting enough, and they, you know, want big paychecks, and, you know, they're fighting once a year, and they're not fighting top quality competition. And so, you know, again, these networks are looking over at the UFC and seeing what's going on there, and then looking at boxing and seeing what's going on here, and they're paying these guys top dollar, and so they're not really happy with what they're getting. So that's why you saw Errol Spence come out and said something about the suits. He was talking about these networks because they're trying to convince him behind the scenes to take the Terence Crawford fight, and, you know, just accept the 50-50 and just take the fight. and so that the fight could happen and everybody could make money and everybody's happy. This is what's really going on. So the fact that Terence Crawford came out recently and said that he's not even going to ask for that fight anymore, a lot of people, getting worried about that, and you're going to see that in the near future, you're going to see Errol Spence basically, accept the 50-50, that I would think, okay, because he's getting a lot of pressure from not just the networks, but from PBC, who doesn't really want the relationship with Fox to end, okay. They want that to continue because they need to get fights, for their fighters. And as you can see, the PBC doesn't really have much in terms of paydays for their fighters at the current time, like Sean, Porter, again, Errol Spence, and the host of other fighters that they have, Danny Garcia. So a lot of these fighters you're hearing are trying to go over the top rank and get payday and asking for astronomical money. For example, you got Keith Thurman out there. What does he have? What do they have? What does PBC have for Keith Thurman? Nothing really. Okay. So there's not much out there. Pickings are very slim right now for PBC, and so Terence Crawford just basically have to just stand firm, and he's more or less going to get what he wants, because at the end of the day, Top Rank, again, have probably more wiggle room than say a PBC in terms of with these networks, because again, ESPN has a big subscriber base. They got regular TV, they got network TV, they have ESPN Plus, which is an app, like the DAZN app. So they really a little more versatile with what they have, and they're not seeing the same kind of issues that PBC is seeing. So this is basically what's going on in behind the scenes in boxing right now. So so all of this Ldbc talk about, pay-per-view stars and this, the network's not seeing any pay-per-view stars, and they're pretty worried about that. And they don't really see, as far as they're concerned, Errol Spence has been basically a disappointment for them in terms of his, ability to sell pay-per-view and to get people to, and to raise viewership, because again, his pay-per-view has been going down as opposed to up. It was more for Marky Garcia, less for Sean Porter, and even less for Danny Garcia. So his numbers are going down, and the networks are looking at this with alarm, basically. So so again, this Ldbc narrative about pay-per-view stardom and all of that is just pure nonsense. Has nothing to do with reality. And, they're not the guys that's going to be paying these fighters this kind of money. And so when they talk about pay-per-view stars, again, when we talking about 200,000 buyers or 250,000 pay-per-view buyers, there's that's as far from stardom as you can get. And again, these YouTubers and these, with the Mike Tyson and the Jake Paul exhibitions, they were working from an app again, okay, and they're getting more viewership than the networks, okay, than the networks are getting, okay, in terms of pay-per-view fights and things like that. So again, it's very worrying for the networks, and they're not very happy with what's really going on. So at the end of the day, it looks like there's trouble in paradise, okay? And again, Eddie Hearn and Matchroom and DAZN are basically riding the wave, okay? And, PBC and the networks are getting drowned, under the waves, you know what I mean? So it's not looking good for boxing right now. We already saw HBO, bailed out, and Showtime, and now it looks like Fox is getting ready to bail, and so we don't know, what the future is going to hold for boxing, basically, because at this point in time, it looks like it's getting worse and worse every year. And then the driving force behind all of this, again, is the fact that people are not getting the fight they want to see, and so they're not putting, they have other options, and so they're not really, tuning in to watch some of these mismatches and, you know, lackluster fights that they're seeing. No, you know, no real build up, no real drama. Okay, you know, just, you know, fights that, you know, everybody know who's going to win the fight. So, you know, this is what's going on. And so, again, not much excitement in boxing right now, and not much revenue, you know, is being made for these networks, and they're not really happy with what's really going on right now in boxing. So yeah, so I mean, you know, it is what it is though. But again, you know, these LDBC guys are out there pushing narratives again about pay-per-view stars, and you know, it's as far from reality as you can get, you know, when you really dig down and find out what's actually going on behind the scenes. Okay, nothing could be far from, you know, this is as far from the truth as you can get with what they're talking about and what the actual reality is. Okay, so I mean, it looks like, you know, we might end up getting that Crawford Spence fight, you know, sooner than you think, and because at the end of the day, if Crawford decides that he really is not gonna ask for that fight anymore, he's not gonna push for the fight, you might see even more pressure on Errol Spence to accept the 50-50 and make the fight happen. Okay, and so, but you know, we don't know if Errol Spence, he doesn't seem to be, you know, I mean, what you do hear is LDBC fanboys out there, you know, so oh, they're worried about the fact that, you know, Terence Crawford is saying he's not going to call for the fight anymore, you know. But I mean, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, the position that Errol Spence is taking again doesn't really make much sense. Okay, because again, you know, Crawford is the guy bringing him his biggest payday, and you know, you want that guy to take 50-50. So a lot of people not really understanding what that's all about. Okay, here's a guy that's bringing your biggest payday. You can't get that kind of payday anywhere else. Okay, from anybody else. Okay, but you don't want to take this fight, and you know, like I said, the networks are looking for the fight. They're salivating, waiting to see this fight happen, and they're not getting it, and they're wondering, hey, what are we paying these guys all this money for if we can't even get any? You know, we're not benefiting from this. So what's the point of it? So that's why, you know, they're basically ready to end their relationship to Top Rank, not Top Rank, I mean PBC, and then the PBC fighters, they're out there now looking around, you know, trying to see where they're gonna get. So you're gonna see a lot of people start working probably with, you know, Matchroom, probably MT Global as well, and Top Rank, because it looks like PBC, you know, is on, you know, shaky legs right now in terms of, you know, where their fighters can go to make any real money, you know, because a lot of these guys are spoiled over there at PBC. You know, they just want to fight, you know, once every 2 years, whatever, and then expect to make big money. We just saw, you know, Manny Pacquiao, who hasn't fought since he won the title from Keith Thurman, come out and say he wants $40 million to fight Terence Crawford. Now, a lot of people, the networks, they would love to see that fight, but at the end of the day, you know, $40 million. I mean, they're gonna have to come up with different investors to get that kind of money. I don't think the networks are gonna pay that kind of money. Okay, and you know, they're not really happy. They'd much rather see Crawford versus Spence. You know, I would think, and so, you know, it is what it is. But I guess we gotta keep our ears close to the ground, see what's gonna happen, you know, in the next couple of months. But it's not really looking good for PBC and the PBC fighters. A lot of these guys are gonna be looking for paydays. They're not gonna be able to get any. Excuse me. They're not gonna be able to get any paydays because it looks like the well is drying up for the PBC at, you know, at this current time. So you know, I think I'm gonna leave it there. Make sure you subscribe to TBE Boxing. Okay, like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon. This is TBE Boxing. That's all I have for now. I'm out.